I'm Stephanie Agnew, and I'm with the Instructional Media Center here in the library. We're glad that you're all here, and hope that you have enjoyed the day and the information that we've all been able to have today. Right now, we're going to have Thomas LaFoe. He also is with us here in the Instructional Media Center, and we co-teach together. Which I'm not going to co-teach with him today. I'm going to let him solo. But what he's going to introduce you today is cloud computing and how that can work into your world and interesting things that are available with that. So I'm going to turn it over to Thomas and let him take you to the clouds. I will.
This is a handout, and I printed about 15 copies, but they're also going to be on the website along with the videos of these presentations and things like that. Again, my name is Thomas LaFoe, and I work here at the MSU Libraries in the Instructional Media Center. And some of the workshops that we do, we cover things like graphic design programs and Microsoft Office programs, but also some of these new technologies that are sort of popping up and are on the minds of our students and faculty, and so we're trying to keep them up to date on some of these terms that are floating about. And one of those terms is cloud computing. And depending on who you talk to and their level of expertise and how, what their job is, they may give you an entirely different definition than somebody else may give you. So hopefully today we're going to kind of break it down. We're going to look at my definition of cloud computing, so you can take it or leave it as it is. But hopefully, as we go through, if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me and ask them as we go, or certainly we'll have time at the end. But one of the first steps in trying to come up with a definition for cloud computing is starting with the big question, what is cloud computing? But that can be way too broad and a very in-depth question to ask. So the two ways that I've broken this up are first defining what the cloud is, what we're talking about when we talk about the cloud, and then also how it works. So what makes it the cloud, why is it called the cloud, and going from there. And then the third, and I think most important question to ask is how can you use cloud computing? And after we define all of that, we'll then take a look at the different steps that we can take to use cloud computing. These are the three things that I've sort of decided are some of the most important things about cloud computing. You'll see storing and accessing files is a very cloud-based solution. You can also sync information between all of your devices. We're starting to have our desktop computers, our laptop computers, our mobile phones, our tablets, all of these different things, and the cloud can help sort of sync all of your information across your devices. And the last one is a little bit jargon-based, this cost-effective computing solutions, but it's the best thing I could come up with to kind of summarize the idea that the cloud provides a lot of services for free that you can use instead of having to buy costly programs like Photoshop, or even Microsoft Office sometimes for a site-wide license can be very expensive. So we're going to look at these three things here. And we're going to start with, there is a great YouTube video out there, and the reason that I like it is it's called What is Cloud Computing? And they went to a summit sort of like this and asked lots of industry leaders, what is cloud computing? And every single one of them over the course of this 10-minute video gave an entirely different definition. And I thought that was very telling about the fact that we don't really know exactly what cloud computing is, but we know that it contains certain things. One gentleman said, I don't care what's up there just so long as it works. Now this is a great idea because what this is saying is that it does not matter to me how Google is storing my information, on what server, or what sort of bandwidth do they have. None of those questions matter to me. The only thing that matters is that I can put my stuff there and then I can go back and get it when I want it. So that's a very key thing there. You don't need IT people. You, from these stations right here, can access all of your information, and you don't have to be at your desk or in your building. You can get to it wherever you are. Another one is if you need software, hardware beyond your laptop, it's not cloud computing. This is also very telling because this is saying that all you really need is a modem, a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, some memory in a box, and a web browser. And that's all you need to access all of these different tools, all of your information. We're getting to the point where the operating system is even now turning into kind of a cloud-based thing, that you're not really running programs on your computer, you're running them from, here on campus there's a great model that's happening that the computer labs are starting to run just kind of ghost machines that then are communicating to Allen Hall, so across campus here. And that's where all of the programs are installed, and you're just basically seeing a picture of all of that, but still getting to all of the tools that you need in creating your files. So again, we're getting to the point where you just need a web browser, and that's all you need. Now, to get into sort of an IT sort of level, and I am not an IT person, I teach ideas, I don't teach how to actually connect everything together. So this is a very glossed over definition of these three items. Software as a service. This idea of cloud computing is saying that you go to a website such as Google Docs, and you have a word processor, you have a spreadsheet program, you've got a presentation software. These are all created for you. So this is essentially software as a service. You log in, you have access to the tools you need, and that's all you have to do. Now, these things are all designed through something called platform as a service. And what that means is that certain cloud computing corporations have come up with a programming language of sorts. And that's what developers use to create these different softwares as a service. And then you have infrastructure as a service, which is basically saying that you as a company get X amount of space to create whatever you want. And again, you don't have to host it in your library or in your school. It's hosted somewhere else. Somebody takes care of all of the servers and the connections and all of that stuff. You just have a space to put all of your stuff. Does that sort of make sense? Clear as mud in a way. And we'll touch on all of these as we go along. So these are all these people that have said, you know, some very good definitions of cloud computing, some good aspects that we can pull away. But I always want to bring up this guy who makes me laugh, and he will give us his definition. I hope he will give us his definition. We'll come back to him. He basically goes through and says that cloud computing, you have cloud A, you have cloud B, and lightning goes between the clouds. And in that bolt of lightning, you can contain 100 kajillion petateraflops of information, and that's cloud computing. Which makes absolutely no sense to anybody other than him. So we'll try to pull him up at the end. So we've talked about the cloud and sort of the concepts behind cloud computing, but this is kind of a diagram that I've come up with to actually look at what the cloud is. The first simple definition is that the cloud is the internet and how devices share information via the internet. So a very clean definition, just saying that the information is out there and this is how we send it back and forth. Again, as we've said, the not so simple definition is who really knows. It's again very abstract and just is as in-depth as you want it to be. Again, we know that the cloud is the internet and how we exchange information, but cloud computing again becomes that sort of mystical ideal of whatever you want it to be. So now this diagram of what we do know and sort of this structure here, you have all of these devices. So we've got our desktop computers, we've got our laptops, we've got our mobile phones. I've not put an iPad up here yet. I'm working on it. I've got to get over the whole iPad thing first. But then we have kind of this group of people in the middle that have huge storage spaces, offer all of these services. And you can see here I kind of put the three big players. I put Google, Apple, and Microsoft. And then I said cross-platform. And cross-platform is, of course, the larger section of all of these. That includes people like Amazon, who are not necessarily affiliated with one or the other. A program called Dashwire, which we'll talk about later, that's just kind of an open source thing that they're just out there trying to help people. They're not selling things. Google, Apple, and Microsoft all, of course, have their own devices. They want you to stick with them and only use their services. And so all of these people are out there creating this network or this cloud. All of these devices can share information with the cloud, so there are ways that you can do it from your mobile devices, from your laptops, from your desktops. And all of that information can then be cycled around. And this is the most important part, is that if I put something into the cloud from my laptop, I can get to it from my desktop or from my mobile phone, because it's out there. It's not on my hard drive, it's actually somewhere else. And that's where we really start getting into it, because then all of this information can cycle back and forth between all of these devices. So what are some ways that we can use cloud computing? Well, one is storing and accessing files. These are 3 companies that I'm going to cover, or 3 ideas that I'm going to cover. Dropbox is a site that gives you storage, and it also gives you a little folder on your computer, and it syncs all of your information, so you don't have to think about it. You actually just put something in a folder and it magically appears everywhere else, and there's a little video that explains it in more detail. Live Mesh is a Microsoft offering, so this is what they offer, sort of counter to Dropbox. It does a lot of the same things, does a few different things. And SkyDrive is an idea that's been around for a while, that you just have a place where you can put all of your information online. This does not really offer syncing services, but you can access all of your files. If you remember to put them up there, you can get to them wherever you are. Another thing, talking about syncing, getting into mobile devices, I really think that the mobile devices have really started the conversation over again about cloud computing and what it means and why we're talking about it so much. And of course, all of the different phone companies have different, and I say phone companies, it's not the right word, all of the different device manufacturers have their own method to sync information. So we're going to kind of look at the offerings for each of these devices. And then my very jargon-based, cost-effective computing solutions. These are some software as a service that are out there that you can actually use and really do. It's quite amazing what all of these programs can do. Especially being someone who works with Photoshop and works with Microsoft Office on a daily basis, to see these programs for free that you can access from your laptop without having to buy Photoshop is pretty amazing, and we'll kind of look at those. The first is Dropbox.
You've been there. You're about to buy lunch and realize your wallet is in your other pants. Or maybe you left your keys at home. The problem is organization. You need one place for everything, like a magic pocket. Putting something in the magic pocket means it's always there, no matter what you wear or where you are. The same thing is true for computers. If you have more than one, keeping track of all of your files can be a pain. Solving this problem is one of the big ideas behind Dropbox. It's like a magic pocket, a single, secure place for all of your stuff. Let's meet Josh, who is preparing for a big trip to Africa. Right now, all of his trip info is spread across his laptop, desktop, and phone. He needs to consolidate it all and is tired of having to email files to himself or move them around with a USB drive. Then he found Dropbox, which creates a new kind of folder on his computers. These folders work hard to be exactly alike, even across Macs and PCs. By adding his itinerary to his laptop Dropbox, he can be sure the same file will show up in his desktop Dropbox and even on his phone. The same thing happens when he saves a document in a Dropbox folder. The document gets updated across all of his Dropboxes. But it's not just his computers. The Dropbox website also works to be exactly like his other Dropboxes. Anything he puts in Dropbox is available on the website automatically. This way, if his Jeep takes a dive and his computer is ruined, he can still get to his files on the Dropbox website, where they're always backed up. As it turns out, Josh's Safari was a success, and his laptop made it home with lots of videos and photos to share. Instead of emailing everything, he just shared a Dropbox folder with his mom, so she could get copies of photos she wants to frame. Because it worked so well for travel, Josh made Dropbox the home for all of his stuff, so it's accessible anytime, wherever he goes. Whether you're traveling the world, running a business, or simply organizing your life, Dropbox means you can stop worrying about managing files and backups and get on with your next adventure. You can download Dropbox now at getdropbox.com.
Okay, kind of a little sales pitchy video, but the Dropbox service is free up to 2 gigabytes, which is about the size of a jump drive. Now they're getting larger, but you can use up to 2 gigabytes of space for free, and then they have paid services that you can go up to. I think the next step is 50, and then you can go up to 100. And those are a per month service that you can pay for. But again, you kind of see that idea that and the thing that turned me on to Dropbox was the ability to have everything happen for me. I was notorious for downloading, if I was using SkyDrive, I would download something, make a change, and then just save it to my computer and forget to upload it again. So then when I got home and I tried to download it, all of my changes weren't there, so I was kind of stuck. This way, if you save things in that Dropbox folder, it will automatically, when you log in to your computer at home, will check your folder and see that there's a change and download the new one. So, very helpful and a great idea. And of course, since someone had a great idea, Microsoft decided to come along and make one of their own. And to be fair, this live mesh concept has been out for a while. But Live Mesh is basically built into Windows 7. Almost exclusively, you can do some stuff on XP, but they really have integrated it very well into Windows 7. And what this will allow you to do, this kind of skips the idea of it going to a website and then coming back to your computer. This actually just makes the computers communicate with each other so that then something that you update on one will update on the other. So it skips that, and I'll get to another little point later. But this also not only documents, but if you use Internet Explorer, it will take those, which not so many people use Internet Explorer anymore, but it still has a pretty good market share. If you save favorites, or if you have things set up a certain way, this also goes with Microsoft Office programs. It keeps your favorites and your settings the same between these computers, which is kind of an extra little bonus that they can do because they are also the Windows people. So the SkyDrive I mentioned, now they did add this kind of Dropbox component to it, that if you have a SkyDrive, which if you have Hotmail or don't have Hotmail, you can create an account there, and you get 25 gigabytes of space free, which is huge. But they carve out a small little section of it, and I think it's 5 gigabytes that will actually do the same sort of online syncing, so that if I'm not on my computer, if I'm standing at this terminal, I can then pull up the website, find my files, and download them. So it adds that little Dropbox component there. This is another very cool thing, the connecting remotely to your computers. If the computers are both turned on and are running Live Mesh, you can actually go online and log into your computer and use it from a remote location. This is very similar to things like the remote desktop connection, if you've used that before or used a VPN client. This is very helpful. It's not 100% smooth, especially if you're dealing with large files, or if you've got large resolution things that you're looking at. That's more from a Photoshop aspect. But it still is a very helpful tool that you can log in and get to your actual computer at work from home, if you think of it that way. And SkyDrive is a little more simplistic. It's basically designed to hold things like your Microsoft Office documents. If you've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint. You can also store other things. You can store photos and videos. And one of the very neat things about SkyDrive is they've allowed you to then share those folders. So if you put all of your pictures into one folder on your SkyDrive, instead of emailing a bunch of pictures to your mom or your brother or your sister or your coworker, you can just send them a link to your folder, and they can go in and look at the ones that they want to see. So it gives you that ability. That also works for Office documents, so you can share things like Word files or Excel spreadsheets, and you can work on those collaboratively. You can actually work on the same document, and the key thing there, and this happened as soon as email became so popular. We started emailing files to each other, take a look at this, and somebody would make a change and send it back to you, and then you would make a change and send it back to them, and then all of a sudden you've got 5 documents in your email, and you can't remember which one has the latest version. So all of these collaborative services, I think, really alleviate that. If you have one document in one location and you're both going there to work on it, then you know that's the most up-to-date document. So this is one collaboration tool, and of course, lots and lots are popping up. We'll get into those. And I mentioned before, 25 gigabytes of space is a lot of room, even today. So that's pretty remarkable that they're just kind of giving that. And it's free. The SkyDrive service is free. All right. Any questions about that, the document sharing sort of concept? Mm-hmm.
What about security of this space up in the cloud?
So that's always probably the biggest question, and so it's kind of a trust issue. But the thing that you have to remember is that Microsoft doesn't want anything to go wrong, because if they have some sort of breach, that's going to look bad on them, and they're going to lose customers. So you kind of have to put a lot of weight on that. But they also have people working around the clock. So when you're home or on vacation, they have people who are monitoring their services, their systems, and making sure that they're going to stay up and running. A lot of times too, the thing that you have to think of, your computer could crash and just lose everything. But if you put things on a service like this, they are constantly backing up their system. So if they do have some sort of meltdown or a breach, they can usually back up those files. They have, again, tons of room, even beyond what they're offering us. They have more room to back all of this stuff up. That's where it makes sense. So it is kind of it's a tricky question, because there is a trust issue there. You know, making sure that they're not going to, or just close their doors one day and say, you know what, we're done with this, and everything that we had, we just got rid of it. So there's that sort of trust of letting someone else look after your information. Any other questions? All right. The next step here, and what I really think has driven cloud computing back into our common language, is talking about syncing information. And mobile devices are, of course, huge now, and we have tons of things on our mobile devices. The key thing here, talking about our contacts, our calendars, emails, pictures, all the sorts of things that we just kind of collect over the day as we're walking about with our mobile device. Apple has a service called MobileMe. MobileMe is a paid-for service that Apple offers, and of course it works wonderfully with all of these different Apple devices. Let me get in here to this little overview here. So you can see some of the things that it offers. This is very tiny, and I apologize for that. It will sync all of your mail together, so if you have a @Mac account, you can use that, and it keeps all of your mail synced up. It offers contact storage, calendar updates. They have an actual feature where you can find your device, so if you lose your iPad or lose your iPhone, God forbid, you can then actually find it using its GPS. They can turn that on, as we heard in the news not too long ago. They can turn that on and actually find that device for you. They can turn it off, they can wipe it, they can do lots of things to protect all of your information. So it's a very worthwhile service. And iDisk, they also offer with this some storage. So just like SkyDrive, which of course is the Microsoft version, they offer you iDisk, which gives you that same sort of idea. You can upload files to it and access them from anywhere.
But SkyDrive's free and iDisk
Right.
is not.
Right.
Okay.
Google Sync is another one, and I don't mean to say that it costs something because Apple's evil, but it's just it's a more premium service. What the sort of detail that they offer with it is worth paying for, but there's also some griping on the internet that it should be free like everything else. But that's of course a tricky question there. Google Sync, this has actually been around longer, even before Android devices really took off and started selling very well, and even really before Google got into the cell phone market. And I just want to show you, there's a little diagram here on this Google Sync site. It pulls up. It is pretty much cross-platform already, because essentially the idea behind it is if you are using Google services, so if you're using Gmail, if you're using Google Calendar, if you're using Google Docs, then what Sync does is actually updates that on all of your devices, as long as you install those applications on your devices. So even though it's sort of cross-platform, you're still operating in Google's kind of little environment there. There it is. And here's the little chart that I wanted to show you. So you can see they support BlackBerry, iPhone, Nokia, which if you ever hear someone talking about Symbian devices, a lot of Nokia devices run on kind of their own platform called Symbian. Not sure what SyncML is, but also Windows phones. It works well with all of those. Again, all of that is saying that if you download the Gmail client, if you use your calendar to log into Google Calendar, all of that's going to show up because you're all looking at the Google site. The next one, and this kind of follows suit with the other ones, My Phone. This is what Microsoft has come up with for the Windows phones. And it does all the same sorts of things. It's a lot more akin to MobileMe. It has a lot more Microsoft-oriented things that you have to have a Windows phone in order to use it. Things like locating the phone, wiping the phone, updating all of your information. And then cross-platform, which if I can get this one to pull up, Dashwire is something that I found quite a long time ago. I say quite in technology, quite a long time means like 2 years or something. But you can see that as you can see listed here, it has been available for a while and is covered on all of these different devices. The catch here is that really it's an app that you can download and everything's just going to their website. So instead of it actually syncing with the calendar, you just have kind of an online presence for your phone, if you think of it that way. So you can log in, see your text messages, see your emails. You can respond to text from the website, which I think is kind of cool because you can have an actual keyboard and type out your text messages. And so Dashwire, I used it for a while before I had an Android phone. And then Google Sync just made sense because it comes on Android phones. So that's what I switched to at that point. And what these do, they all sync your contacts. And this is also important. So our phones have sort of become our Rolodexes. I don't know my mother's phone number anymore, which I think is kind of sad, but she moved and changed her number, so I can't be expected to remember it because it's in my phone. The problem is if I lose my phone, then I can't call my mom, and usually that's the first person I need to call to tell them that I lost my phone. But since I don't have it, I'm kind of out of luck there. The great thing about syncing all of this information is if I do lose my phone, I can then, and using Google Sync as an example, I can log into my Gmail account and I can look at my contacts and I can find that information. So having everything stored in one location, and again, it does the same thing. If you have MobileMe, you would log into your Mac account, and Windows, you would log into your Live account, and it has everything there. The other great thing about it is that if I buy a new phone, or a second phone, or an iPad, I could then set up that same service and download everything to that phone, or to that new device. So I don't have to go back in and re-add all of my information. If you'd gotten a phone anytime in the past couple of years, you had to hope that the store could read it and transfer all of your numbers over. With a service like this, if you get a new phone, you just log in with your account and then everything downloads for you. So that's, I think, one of the biggest things about the contacts here. Also, to mention, you can download Facebook apps, and Facebook apps will actually search your entire friends list and put everybody into your phone, which I don't know a single person who really wants that to happen. But it can go through, and if you have just emails for somebody, but they've listed their phone number on Facebook, it will add that in for you. So then all of a sudden you have that extra method of communication. And you can limit that app to just sync with existing contacts and don't add anybody new, just leave it alone. Or you can tell it, ignore that altogether, don't touch my phone numbers. So. Calendars, this is one area that I would like to see some improvement in. Generally they work fine, but there's a little bit of a delay and some things can kind of trip you up. If you use all one service, so if you have all Apple devices, then using something like MobileMe and iCalendar is perfect because they know how to communicate well and they work fine. If you have Android and use Google Calendar all the way through, then things go well. Same thing with Outlook and Windows Phone. Now, if you have to use something like we do here in the library, we have to use GroupWise for our email and our calendars. It is almost impossible to get it to cooperate. There are lots of workarounds, and of course, if you Google anything about syncing your phone to anything, people have talked about it and come up with solutions and workarounds and things that you can do, but it's still a problem and still a pain to really try to get all of that together. So I would like to see more cooperation with the calendar programs. But for the most part, if you stick with one or the other, it will work. Now for the GroupWise solution, there's sort of a thing, if you can export your calendar, you can usually import it into something, so all of the events that you do have, you can transfer to your phone. But getting those synced up, those rules sort of change per device. Does that sort of make sense? Kind of a hassle, but still very helpful because once you set up this sync, you can then add something from your phone. If you're at the dentist and they schedule your next appointment, you can put it on your phone, you can send yourself a reminder or an appointment, and then that way it appears on all of your devices. And you don't have to think, all right, well I put it on my phone, but now I have to remember when I get to work to put it on my work calendar. You can do all of that in one sitting if you're still in the chair. But you can do that and keep everything up to date. And then email, this solution kind of happened a while back. If you use something like Gmail or Yahoo or Hotmail, those are sort of cloud computing solutions in and of themselves. They have apps that you can download for your phone, and the key thing there is that when you check mail on your phone or at your desk, then you don't have to then go home and sift through the stuff that you've already read. It keeps that updated, so you know what you've read all across all of your devices. Right. So this gets into the software as a service. These are some programs that are out there that you can use. And again, I broke this really into, because this is kind of how my mind works in my current position here. We deal with graphic editing stuff and we deal with Microsoft Office stuff. So these solutions always jump to my mind first. Aviary is a set of programs that I think are just really pretty amazing for free. They offer photo design or photo re-editing that you can go in and apply all of these effects. And it's called Aviary because all of the products are named after birds. The image editor, the effects editor, and even a screen capture program that they have available. Design for things, and again that would relate sort of to a Photoshop aspect. You can then go into the design area, which is relating more toward Illustrator, if you've ever used Adobe Illustrator. It designs vector graphics, which are sort of like what you see here. Anything that looks sort of clip arty that you can blow up or shrink down, those are vector programs. And again, all of these Adobe programs are hugely expensive. And then here they are, again, basic programs, but for free. You can make vector images, you can edit your photos. You can even edit audio. This is a great audio mixer here called Mina. The music creator is a little bit getting out of my realm. My creativity stops at probably audio. But the music creator, if you do play music, you can use that to kind of mix things together. The audio can be very helpful if you get into podcasting at all and you just need something to edit your audio files down or take out swear words or anything that may have happened during the recording. You can go in and edit those very easily. Photoshop, not to be left out of the picture, has also created an online version of their program. And if you go to, and again, these URLs are in the handout. But again, if you Google any of these, just Aviary or Photoshop Express, this is actually Photoshop.com. going to show you this one very quickly. It will pull up. This one, in my opinion, is a little bit more limiting than the aviary programs, but it may be a higher quality or a little bit easier to use. So if I just took one of these as an example here, we'll grab this flower. This really gets at the heart of this software as a service. So you can see I'm just in my browser here. And from here I can upload pictures, which if you look, I think you have to create an account first before you can upload pictures. These are just samples. But over here at the side I can crop this, so I can get rid of some of the extra space here. Go back to that. I think I made it go away. But you can see from here, you've got lots of different effects that you can apply to the image. You can do kind of artsy things like turn it into a painting. Those sorts of things that people use Photoshop for a lot are available right here through your web browser. So there are other ones out there. These are just two that I wanted to highlight here. As for documents, so document editing, you can tell Google Docs, of course, has been out for a while. One of the key things here is that it allows you to create documents. You can store documents. There's not, as far as I can remember, there's not a limit. Of course, these documents don't get very large to begin with. But it has all sorts of sharing applications that you can collaborate with on these documents with other people. And they have tons of videos here that you can go through, sharing, collaboration. It talks about spreadsheets. One of the great things about Google Docs is that it has a forms option, and what the forms really are surveys. And so if you ever have to create surveys, in fact, there's a survey that you're going to take at the end of today that we created through Google Docs. It's free. It offers great summaries of your information. Very easy to design these surveys and distribute. Again, all free and all right here in your browser. And again, as I mentioned earlier, not to be outdone, Microsoft has also kind of piggybacked off of this idea and created something called their Office Web Apps, not the most catchy name. But these are all built off of the same concept and using your SkyDrive. If you put your files on your SkyDrive, then you can actually edit them. And they sort of look like, I do want to kind of log into mine and show you. This is also the resurgence of my Hotmail account. I had not seen it for years. I think I need to go to live. There I am. So you have these documents here. This is kind of what your SkyDrive looks like. If I go into, we'll see what's happening here. This is kind of the neat thing. After you open it, so of course you can open and view these files, but if you click this Edit in Browser, hopefully it will convert that time. they've made an effort to actually make this look like Word. So you can see across the top, they've given you this same little ribbon here with all of your tools. Now notice you're missing lots of tabs. Like you don't have as much functionality as you do in Word. But here you can very easily, take things and bold those. You can rearrange things. So kind of a limited selection, but they kind of make it look like Word, so it gives you that sort of effect there. And again, the same thing there. If you are working with your coworkers on a document and you create a shared space on a SkyDrive like this, then when they open it, they'll be looking at this same document and then making the changes that they need. It also keeps track of what I'm looking for is versions. It keeps track of who's made what change. So if somebody goes in and completely messes everything up or changes your formatting and you didn't like it, you can go back to previous versions. That's the same thing in Google Docs. It kind of, again, since they have tons of storage, they can keep multiple copies. And then once everything is done, you can go in and clean out that version history so then you don't go back accidentally or don't open up the wrong one. But they're very helpful programs that are out there, and again, for free. So kind of wrapping this up, cloud computing in general can just be either as light of a definition as kind of surface or as in-depth as it needs to be. Again, if we were to ask Paul running around what he thinks, Paul Huddleston, our head of systems here, if we were to ask him what cloud computing means to him, he would probably go into something much more in-depth than me saying, oh, well, you can make documents and open up pictures and stuff. He would go into much more in-depth about server space and all of this. So that definition can change from person to person. But all of it revolves around sharing information and putting your information in one central location that you can access from any area or from any device. I added this one, which I think is kind of important, especially in a library setting where you may be working at several desks at the same time or throughout the day. This can free you from the idea of having a workstation, that you have everything saved on your desktop or on your laptop. If you put things in this kind of cloud location, then you can get to it wherever you are. And again, the collaboration issue, I think that's a huge part of it. I think the ability to share information and work on the same document instead of emailing it to multiple people and creating multiple copies certainly makes it a worthwhile thing. So at this point, I just want to open it up for any questions, anything that may come up you've thought about. Mm-hmm.
I guess a question I would have for you as well as for the group is anybody providing guidance or training for students in this sort of activity? I bring that up because we do something called KC a la carte, which is Knowledge Center a la carte. And Google, we have 2 or 3 different sessions, like one on Google Docs, one on like the Google Pantheon, and a bunch of other stuff like Dropbox, things like that.
We have actually added back in a Google Docs session. I think one of the problematic things about teaching that session is that it would help if they had an account to begin with, but sometimes they're coming in because they don't know what it is at all and just want to know about it. So it sort of gets into more of a presentation like this, but we certainly, if anyone comes in and has questions about it, we try to answer them. But we have started a session again because I think that there is enough out there. Originally it was very plain, it was very just go create a document, type some things, and it's there. Now you can share, you can organize into folders, you can save copies and all this sort of stuff. So we've started adding those back in and kind of helping support those.
And I can tell you at my high school, at the high school level, I will be working with Google Docs and the collaboration process amongst students. So we can make sure that each person in a group is actually contributing to the group and one person only doesn't do the work. And that's one of the major focuses on the collaboration collaboration process that we're trying to develop in the high school student.
We don't see this much with our students at college. What we see is the general public that come in to use our computers, and then our computers for the general public don't have Word on them. And so did we actually sit there with them and open up a Google Doc account for them, with them and everything? Say now you can go to any computer you want to, and you can have access to documents and stuff like this that you save, and that you get by email, and take from your email, put them in your Google Docs account, and then you have them to look at. And when the general public find out about it, they're thrilled because they didn't pay for it, and they come into our library and access it whenever they want to. And so but with our own students, no, they don't. They have Word and stuff like that, and they don't do the cloud. They stuck to the computers.
It's very weird. The next generation of students that are coming in are sort of know-it-alls, but then as soon as you show them something like this, they're like, oh. And you would think if you knew all of this other stuff, why didn't you? I don't know.
I was the manager of the IT help desk at University of Alabama Huntsville. And besides having to clear every virus in the world off the student computers, we quickly found out that the younger kids know less than we do. It's a myth that they know more. They might know how to play games on their computers, but they don't know their computers as well as a lot of people think they do.
They don't have the literacy skills. They
don't know the workings behind it, because we found out all the time that how do I download that? You don't know how to download? It's amazing what they don't know how to do. But they know how to play games.
And I always make the joke that students come in for Photoshop and think that they know how to use Photoshop because they've made lolcat pictures. If you know what lolcat pictures, it's basically a picture of a cat with text on it making some sort of silly comment. And they think since they can do that in Photoshop that they're experts at Photoshop. I'm like, there's so much more that it can do. And so,
well, we actually do workshops here we call them professor books, where a professor may bring a class over and want us to teach them. It could be Word, PowerPoint, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, and the students will be in the class and they won't ask any questions. Then they think that they know it all, and then they have an assignment, and then they'll sit through the class. They won't ask you anything, and then they come to the lab and they're like, "Why did I do this? I was in your workshop," and I was like, there's something to be said about going to a workshop. So that is true that they don't know it all.
In our school, we're probably a little bit behind the times because we're just now developing a classroom, a lab, computer lab, to train the professors on the software and stuff like that. So that we have a lot of professors that are a little bit behind the time and everything like this, and we need to train them first.
Right.
And so we're a little bit behind the time there. So we're just now getting the professors trained.
Well, I can tell you in high school and using the cloud computing, I have a couple, of course, teachers who are like, "Yeah, tell me more." So I'll get them doing something. And for instance, last year I taught, I think almost everybody in this one particular teacher's class, Mr. Lopez's class, how to use Prezi. And so I said, "Oh Lord," I said, "now I know the seniors and the juniors all have to do presentations on their big research project for English." So, and I told my teachers, I said, "Okay, some of them are going to want to ask to use Prezi. Please let them do a Prezi instead of a PowerPoint." So I had to pre-warn them to use something that they might not have heard of, and explain, what it might be, and talk to the other teacher so that they would be willing to do that and not stifle, the kids. So
it's true, and I think
and they did.
Just changing norms and just thinking outside of saving things to your computer, and thinking about, well, I can save it here and actually access it everywhere. And sort of going into that, the newer Office versions, so I think 2007 and 2010, will actually allow you to save to the SkyDrive. So if you create that account, you can do it from your computer and not have to use the web app if you don't want to use that, which is another step toward it. I think that we always do everything on our computers because that's where the heavier programs are and where we can get the most done, and then it's remembering to upload it or then sending it to one of these accounts. kind of a,
Not losing the flash drive.
right, flash drives and email.
What a 17-year-old will do.
Yeah, kind of a follow-up on that. My first question is one thing we don't have, and one reason we like to teach about Google Docs and Dropbox is we don't have a student storage space. And I'm just curious if people here, do you tend to have, you know, whatever it might be, some gigabytes of space? And I bring it up because once in a while our power goes out. And if students haven't been saving to their flash drive or their Dropbox or Google Docs or whatever, I'm the reference guy. I get to I get to hear about it. And of course I go back to our IT guys all the time going, please, there's one thing you can do is set up, you know, a virtual storage space for the students. So since they haven't, that's why I'm on a big thing to get this into this sort of student learning culture.
We recently went to Gmail for student accounts. Does that give them access to Google Docs and all of that? Do you know? I've not explored that.
It does. I think if they log into Gmail, they can drop down
Right.
Google Docs.
Because they log in with their msstate.edu still, but I think, and so having that Google space, you know, can, if they use the Google Docs, we'll give that to them. But we used to have space for websites, but that was, you would have to use FTP to get things up there. That would just never, that's a whole other challenge that you don't want to go into for a Word document. But I think that's the closest thing we've got.
I guess I'm putting everybody to sleep. But one other thing that I don't remember you mentioning is that Google now has a sync with Microsoft. I mean, with Office Word on your PC, so that you can be working in Word and sync it up to Google Docs, and then when you open the doc. Or when you open, it's pretty neat because it actually looked exactly like the Microsoft product you were showing us. It's got a little banner across the top of the page that says, you know, do you want to sync? And I found out the hard way that it will automatically sync if you don't tell it to only sync when you manually ask it to. I was working on a sensitive document, and it just whoop. And it was, you know, up in Google.
Right. Right.
But it's pretty cool.
I have to look that up. All right. Any other questions? I think we're running up to the download. Now I'm shifting back into committee member instead of presenter. 3:30 the download, and that's just a good wrap-up session and tell us what you've learned, sort of thing. Again, if you did not get a handout or want a handout, either I can run upstairs and print you one. That's a good thing about presenting where you work. But also, they'll be online along with all of these videos and everybody else's handouts. So. All right. Thanks very much.